Present.
Mrs. Greiner,
Present.
Ms. Hardiman,
Present.
Ms. Myers,
Present.
Dr. Rosello,
Present.
Mr. Peters,
Here.
Mr. Tripp.
Here, if you would all join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, that brings us to approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the board approves the agenda as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion about the agenda? Seems there is none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Approval of agenda. Next up, approval of the minutes for work session and workshop business meeting of December 10th and closed session of December 17th.
through it.
Is there a motion?
I move for the approval of the minutes from the work session and workshop/business meetings of December 10th and December 17th, 2024 to be approved as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion regarding the minutes? Seeing as there is none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Minutes have been approved. This brings us to our public participation portion of the meeting. I do not see any members of the public here tonight, so we will move on. We have our superintendent's report. Dr. Merlin.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. I'd like to invite Dr. Matthews to the podium. This evening, Dr. Matthews will be providing the board with an update on our English language learners and the progress that's being made. And I just always enjoy this part of the presentation when Dr. Matthews presents the work that's being done in this, under your leadership in this department and in our schools to really support our students. So, Dr. Matthews, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo, and good evening, Board.
Good evening.
It is my pleasure to share an update with you all on our enrollment and the efforts that we have for our English learners in the school district to make sure they are supported. The strategic goal alignment for this report is, of course, to improve academic achievement, so I will discuss the academic achievement of our English learners as measured by their required state assessment, the ALPA 21, and then also goal 4, to ensure each student is supported and connected. We have many great resources in place to ensure that our English learners are supported and connected with our school community. Before I begin tonight with the data, I did want to review just a few key terms with you all again, starting with English learners, just defining who this population of students are. And they are students that are in the process of acquiring English proficiency, and they have a first language that is other than English or in addition to English. Within the English learners, we also have newcomers, and those are K-12 students who are born outside of the U.S. and have arrived in our country within the last 3 years, and they are still learning the English language. And then we love our acronyms in education, so I just wanted to share one with you here before we jump in. You'll hear me mention LEAP, which is our Language Instruction Education Program. In terms of proficiency, some key terms we use are intensive or emerging English learners. So that's the category or rating they receive if they are not yet proficient under the state's English language proficiency standards, which is what are measured by the ALPA 21 assessment. And then the other category for those students who are not quite proficient is intermediate or progressing English learners. So they're in that kind of middle band where they're approaching that proficiency, but haven't yet quite hit that target of proficiency. So before we discuss the results of last year's ALPA 21, I did want to share a little more information with you about who we are serving in this area with our enrollment data. And I shared a similar graph with you last year showing that enrollment data for fall over time for the last 5 years. So this has been updated for this most current fall and our enrollment numbers by elementary, middle school, high school, and then the district as a total. You can see there on the far right, as a total in the district level, we are serving 73 more English learners than we were in the previous year, with a total of 655. The most significant increase in the number of English learners was at the elementary level. We had an increase of 50 students at that level alone. But the largest percentage of increase was actually at the middle school level, where we had been pretty steady. There you can see we jumped from 74 to 102 English learners in the middle school. High school was fairly steady with a decrease of 5, so pretty stable and consistent enrollment at the high school level this year. I did break that down by our newcomer enrollment. So these students are included in that overall English learner data, but then I pulled out just our newcomers by year for the last 3 years. I've really been monitoring this. And when you look there on the far right-hand column, again, that's our total as a district. And the first thing you might notice is we have nearly tripled the number of newcomers we are serving from 2022-23 to our current school year. Then again, breaking that down by level, at the elementary level, we have seen an increase of 30 students in that newcomer population from last fall to this fall. At the middle school, we also saw almost an increase of 30 students there with that addition of 29. And then at the high school, we have 10 additional newcomers being served this year compared to last year. So pretty significant increases across the board when you think about 3 years of data. In addition to that, we are serving students who speak 23 different first languages as their home languages. When I presented this last year, that number was 24. So you might just think, oh, well, one language just fell off, right? Well, that's not true either. This is a constantly moving target, and we're continually adapting to the different languages. We actually had 9 languages drop from our list last year that was presented to you, and then 8 new languages for students moving in with different first languages. So we are continuing to pivot and see how we can best support families with those different languages. We are so thankful for different technologies and services that are available to us to provide those services. We use Propio Language Line as a live in-person interpreter to be able to communicate with families orally via the phone, or sometimes scheduled like Google Meets or those kinds of things. We also have 2 full-time bilingual employees who translate and interpret or serve as bilingual liaisons for our Spanish-speaking families. And they do make up about 89% of our English learner population, the families who speak Spanish as their first language. Another change we saw last year was the second most common language was Chuukese at about 2% of our population. That is now switched, and Dari is actually our second most common first language at about 4% of our student population. So we will next get into the ALPA 21 Dynamic Screener. Again, just sharing a little information about what the assessment is, and then I will get to those results. So to determine the English proficiency levels of our current English learners, or even potential English learners that could be newly identified, we use the ALPA 21 Dynamic Screener. This is the state-approved English language proficiency placement assessment, and it's used to screen any newly enrolled students from out of state and kindergarten students whose families indicate a language other than English on the home language survey. And then it's also used to assess all of our currently identified English language learners to determine their proficiency each year. This assessment is administered by our ELL teachers. They are trained annually on the administration of this, just like they would be for the ISASP assessment. And it's computer-based. There are 4 domains that are tested: listening, reading, speaking, and writing, and they're a little bit different. Multiple choice are provided for listening and for reading. For the speaking portion, there is actually a recording that is sent in for outside scoring on a rubric, and then for writing, we also submit a written portion for outside scoring on a rubric. Each of the 4 domains is scored on a 5-point scale from beginning to advanced. Students need a score of a 4, so early advanced, or a 5, which is advanced, in all 4 areas to be considered proficient. So that's where that Emerging comes into play, where if they're not on a 4 in any of those areas, they're going to be emerging. If they're hitting 3s in some of those areas, they're going to be in that middle band before they hit proficiency. So they'll be approaching that proficiency. You can see here that students perform at higher levels on the listening and speaking portions of the assessment, and that's really consistent with what we know about language acquisition. Even when you think about young children, they're going to learn to listen and speak in their native language first or in a new language first before they can apply that to the reading and writing portions. That very much aligns with what we see here, where we have 46% of our students proficient in listening and 40% in speaking, compared to 20% proficient in reading and 15% in writing. So when you put those together, we had a total of 68 students last year who were proficient, meaning they scored in that 4 or 5 band in all 4 areas. That was 11.5% of our student population that is served through English Language Learner Services, which is an increase from the previous year of about 9% of our English learner population. We had 122 in that emerging band and 398 in the progressing band. One good piece of news here that's very positive is those 68 students who are proficient, because of the way that the changes were made for the Iowa School Performance Profiles, will now continue to count in our English learner student group for our student performance profiles. And we see that as a real positive, because in the past we've said, well, we get these students to proficiency and that's great, but now they're no longer included in that student group when we report the data and when we're held accountable for them. So that is a new change that we feel very positive about, that they will be included for the next 2 years. And of course, we continue to monitor their proficiency status and need for services over that time as well. We have many supports in place to support our English learners, many dedicated employees in addition to those 2 that I mentioned, and they do such an amazing job providing LEAP through our model for English language services, which is sheltered instruction and English as a second language program, and that can include push-in and pull-out services for those students. We are also very intentional about ongoing professional development and collaboration for both our English learner teachers as well as our general education teachers, because these are all of our students, and all of the teachers that are serving them are really good about collaborating and working to best meet the needs of those students, and we want to make sure that they feel empowered and equipped to do so. So we're very thankful for that close collaboration between them. We also make sure we have resources available to teachers to support them. We have a curriculum folder that includes additional scaffolds, visual supports, orientation tips, and accommodations, just to help the students feel welcome and acclimated when it's difficult to have that two-way communication at different times. Last year when I presented, I had shared with you a new resource we were using at that time called the Time Kettle Translation Earbuds, and that's that direct two-way communication in the student's first language, so they can have an earbud and an iPad and listen to instruction in their first language live, and then they can communicate back in their first language and have it translate to the teacher. So we've been able to expand those using our Title III immigrant funds to make sure that those are in the hands of more of our students. That's been a great resource and asset for us. I'm also super thankful for the coaching and consultation support through our program lead and our instructional coach for the English language department. And as mentioned last year when I presented, we did embark on a pilot of our new curricular resources for 612 EL instruction. We are wrapping that up this spring, and we will have a recommendation for you for new resources as part of our regular adoption cycle for our English learners at the 6th through 12th grade levels. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Can you give me an idea on what the EL curriculum looks like? Is it a separate class like foreign language, or is it just consistent throughout the day?
So it's a mixed model. We have at elementary, we use a combination of push-in and pull-out. We use for particularly English language arts a supplemental resource to our universal curriculum. It's called WonderWorks, and it's an intervention resource that they're able to use to help them more easily access their universal, but also then to build language and vocabulary. So that's the pull-out portion. At secondary, we have sheltered English as part of the model, where it would be a classroom of students who are all English learners. And then we also have students that are in core classrooms and are supported through that model.
If you mentioned this and I just missed it, I apologize. But when you were talking about the proficiency levels, when a student's deemed proficient and there's 2 years where they're still included into the statistic before they're removed, is there regular testing in case, maybe a student finds that when they move to, 5th grade up to 6th grade or something, that maybe they're having a bit more trouble with, some of the grammar and what's happening and maybe deemed not as proficient where they have to move back to ELL classes, or does that happen often? Or?
Yes, we
Okay.
continue to monitor the proficiency of our English learners beyond that initial year of proficiency and can screen them again if
Okay,
deemed
even,
necessary.
okay, good,
Yes.
even after that 2 years, okay.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
What is the frequency of the assessment? Like, I know we do MAP and track that, so do we do the same, something similar with
This
the-
is an annual assessment.
Just annually?
Yes.
Okay.
On average, it takes, about 5 years for proficiency? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's what we're funded for, is 5 years of services.
This might be an off question, but do we teach our foreign languages the same? Where in 5 years, someone could be proficient in a foreign language just like they are in English using this same model?
Well, we only have high school for 4 years, so I don't know if I can fully answer that.
Well, sure, but you do EL in elementary school too, don't you?
Yes, but for world language, I would say in a class, if you had 4 years of a world language class, then you would have a pretty standard level of proficiency.
Last thing, since we have a lot of bilingual students coming out of the EL, if they're proficient, are they earning their bilingual certificates in their native language plus English, as opposed to English plus Spanish or alternative?
Yes, so are you talking about the seal of biliteracy?
Yeah.
Or yes, so they have to be proficient in both their first language and English, and we are seeing an increase in the number of students earning that seal.
Are we seeing it from the EL students particularly? Are they being proficient enough in English that they're already bilingual?
Yes, several of them
Okay.
are. Yes.
Good.
How many EL teachers are there across the district?
Oh goodness, you're going to test me here.
Sorry.
That's okay. I do not want to give you bad information, so can I put that in a note for you and get that to you? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a really good guess.
Do we see the transition periods from 5th to 6th and 8th to 9th? Do we see any correlation between our EL students? I don't know. I mean, generally, they're going to have the same sort of transition period, but are there any differences with them?
I think just like any transition plan, the buildings do such a great job of collaborating and discussing each student's needs, whether that's an academic need, a behavioral need, a language need. So we really make sure that every student is supported with what they need, and that definitely includes our English learners. So I wouldn't say the transition is more difficult for them.
Okay, thanks. How have the students been reacting to the Time Kettle translation earbuds? That seems like such a cool piece of technology. I'm just wondering how they react.
Very positively. It's amazing sometimes when you see them for the first time and they're hearing their home language and understanding what their teacher is telling them. It's just like they light up. So it's really special to see that initial, like, wow, I get it. I understand what you're telling me. That comfort, you kind of see them relax a little bit into that. So it's been really well received.
Are they using those mainly like when they're having conversations with their teacher or like when the teacher is explaining a lesson? Like when are they using those?
All direct instruction. It could be one-on-one with a teacher, group work with peers.
Cool.
Versatile.
Did you have something?
No, Angela's.
No, she
Stole it?
stepped all over my questions.
Good question. Anything else from the board?
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Matthews.
At this time, I'm inviting Mr. Hamilton to join us at the podium. Mr. Hamilton's going to provide the board an update on our foundation's learning walks and how the work is going. We really made a commitment to the culture of our schools. And as we've made this pivot and shifted to the safe and sound, I'm sorry, it's not safe and sound, it's safe and civil. The work there and the research that was done, Foundations was the first component we rolled out. So, Mr. Hamilton, the floor is yours.
Yes, like Dr. Murillo said, and you heard Dr. Matthews mention the universal tier for reading or math. Foundations is really our universal for student behavior. Foundations is for school-wide behavior. CHAMPS and discipline in secondary schools is our classroom behavior. So this is our universal tier. Tonight, what I'd like to do is that we're going to talk about 4 things. We're going to talk about the purpose of the Foundations walks, components, and then some celebrations and next steps. So we've done Foundation walks in all of our buildings, every single one of our buildings, including ELC and Canesville. We started in October and we finished in December. And we'll also do more in second semester. They're scheduled just like our math and ELA learning walks twice a year. The purpose of the Foundation walks, you've seen this slide before because it's the same exact purpose of our ELA and math learning walks. We are out there to ensure district level support is available and continuous improvement continues to happen. We're never standing still in this district. To identify trends within and across buildings in the district, from a district perspective and a school perspective, looking at trends within a building, what's going well, what do we need to change? To plan for future leadership actions to support student achievement. Everything we do, I know I just said this is about behavior, but behavior is about student achievement. We want kids to be in class all the time learning. So if we can make sure that their behavior is on point, we can make sure that they're doing that. And then the last part is to celebrate growth and achievement. We don't stand up enough and talk about the good work that's being done in our classrooms and by our staff. So this is a way for us to go out and celebrate that work that's being done. Looking at the participants within our Foundations learning walks. Myself or Kate Bays, and Kate Bays is a special education coordinator within the district. She wanted to be here tonight, but she had prior commitments. She has really taken this lead on Foundations and CHAMPS and DSC. She is a great resource for schools. She and I split the schools first semester. She went to half, and I went to the other half. Next semester, I'll go to the other schools, and she'll go to mine. So we are seeing, between the two of us, we're seeing every school. Following our model of MTSS, multi-tiered system of supports, there is a district administrator assigned to every one of our buildings looking at and monitoring the MTSS process. So that district member is at the walks. Represented by the school, the administrator is obviously at the walks as well as their behavior consultants. Behavior consultants within the buildings are really looking at behavior, obviously, with their name at each building. So they're the ones leading and setting the agenda within the building. And then Foundation team members. Each school has a Foundations team. That team is between 4 and 10 people. We don't expect that all of those people are able to be at the learning walks because it's done during the school day. It's about a 3-hour window, and so pulling all those people out of the classroom isn't possible. Typically, we're getting 2 to 3 of the Foundations team members at the walks with us. Give you a little bit of a timeline of what happens. Prior to the visits, we have a calendar that we send out at the very beginning of the year so schools know when their time is scheduled. We provide them the materials that they need. We want our time in the building to be walking the building, looking at kids, talking to kids, being in classrooms. We want our time to be as efficient as possible, and we know that everybody's time is limited. So we send out all the materials ahead of time and really let the schools create the agenda. Our job is to support the work that's done in schools. So they're creating the agenda. They're telling us what common area, when we look at during the visit, they're telling us what common area observations we're going to do. They're telling us what classrooms we're going to go into. I'm going to talk about each one of these points that we do during the visit: the archive review, common area observations, basic 5 observations, the interviews, and the STOIC feedback in detail. And then after the visit, we are expecting our Learning Walk members to share the feedback with the Foundations team. The Foundations team within the building is driving the work. They will then synthesize that feedback and report back to the whole staff. And they're going to talk about their celebrations, and they're going to talk about their gaps. And then we're really going to look at, from a Foundations team perspective, what more supports can we use, that could you use from the district? So let's talk about each one of the components. The archive review is really looking at what have you done within your building. This is the 3rd year. So we started 2 years ago. This is our 3rd year, our 2nd year of implementation. A lot of work has been done within the buildings. We don't want that work to be lost. How are your materials organized? Is it accessible and easy to navigate? And do you have everything you need that if a new principal came in or new staff members or new foundations team members come in, they can easily see the work that's been done. So we're not duplicating that work, we're moving forward with it each time. The next thing that we do is we do our common area observations. Foundations really looks at how are students moving throughout the building. So common areas would be lunchrooms, bathrooms, hallways, arrival, dismissal, all those areas where kids have expectations in how to behave throughout the whole building. You can see in this picture, Diane added a couple pictures for me. These are a couple real life examples of some of the expectations within the hallway. You can see Franklin's there, and you can see, I believe that's Wilson's there. So, some expectations. When we do the common area observations, typically they're about 20 minutes. So we're looking at what's going on within that area for about 20 minutes. We have a form that we use. I should add, I provided all of the forms to you in your packet, so hopefully you've seen them. We're really looking at these areas of, are the rules and expectations and procedures, are they posted? Have they been taught? Do kids know them? Because we can post the rules and expectations all we want, but if we've never taught them to kids, they won't know what they're supposed to do. We're looking at student safety. During our observation time, are kids safe? Are the rules and expectations meeting the needs to keep kids safe? The interactions between staff and students, are they respectful? We know kids are going to need to be corrected. So when they're corrected, is it in a positive manner? This all stems from the overarching is a positive behavior instructional support. Again, it's positive in reteaching. Is student behavior appropriate? So you may have rules, but are kids following them? And then the productivity. Productivity means in lunch, we're there to eat lunch, right? So are they going in, being able to eat lunch in that timely manner that they have and exit in a proper way? Bathroom is the same thing. Are they going into the bathroom, taking care of what needs to be done, and exiting in a proper way? The basic 5 observation is done within the classroom. This is a 15-minute observation. The first 10 minutes, we're looking at, we all, again, have our basic observation sheets. We're looking at our ratio of interactions. So we want our teachers to be positive with students. It should be at least a 3-to-1 positive to corrective interaction with staff or with students. Opportunities to respond. When we're teaching, if kids are engaged in our learning, they're more likely to really to learn and know what's going on within a classroom. So we look at the number of opportunities within that 10-minute time frame that kids have to respond. We then look at disruptions within the classroom. I could sit there and be tapping on my table. That wouldn't necessarily be caused a disruption, but what a disruption would be if I'm getting Ms. Greiner to look at me because I'm tapping at my table, now I've disrupted her learning. So that's really what we're looking at for disruptions. And then the last piece of this is the CHAMPS. You all know CHAMP stands for Conversation, Help, Activity, Movement, Participation, Success. We have CHAMP expectations within our classrooms. When we're doing the observation, are the kids following what our CHAMP expectations are within the classroom? My very favorite piece of the Foundations Learning Walk are the student and staff interviews. Again, I included the interview forms in your packet. What we're really looking at there is, you can tell us that the school-wide expectations and they can be posted, but do staff and students know them? Have they been taught? Are the common area expectations, have they been taught and are they followed? And then really what's going well and what would you change? The very best part that I love about the student and staff interviews is each school has an opportunity to make their own questions. So an example of that might be, like at Roosevelt Elementary, they've really been working with students on having a strategy that if they become dysregulated, a way that they can get themselves regulated. So we asked students, what strategies do you use to become regulated? That was a piece that the school could then say, of the 10 students we interviewed, 9 of them had at least 3 strategies to become regulated. which is great because it monitors the work. Same with staff. You can really ask them because it's anonymous. You can ask them, what are some things that are going well with your foundations team? What do we need to improve? What's the next area that we should focus on? It gives school an opportunity to ask in an anonymous way that maybe they won't garner that information by just if the principal's asking directly. The Stoic feedback form, again, it's included in your packet, is really our note catcher. So this is the form that we're using after we've done all of these other components. This is where we're taking our notes. We're looking at the structure of the building, what's being taught, what was observed, the interactions between staff and the corrections. Each box is filled in each one of those areas are things that we see, things that we think about what we saw, and then I wonder. And then the best part of this is really the celebrations and the gaps. There's room for improvement in every one of our schools. Nobody's going to do it perfectly. There's too many moving parts. So that's really looking at what are you doing well, and then what are some things that you could improve on, and then this is where they document their next steps. So that being said, I wanted to take just a little bit of time to share some celebrations that we're seeing with the use of foundations and CHAMPS and DSC. As I reported a few months ago, our behavior referrals have gone down significantly. We should never be a place where we have zero behavior referrals, because just like students need help with math and reading, students will always need help regulating. So we'll never be at zero, but we've seen a significant decrease in our behavior referrals district-wide. Looking at the common area observations, one of the things that we're celebrating in the district, as a district, is all of our schools have implemented at least 2 areas. So they've really taken the time to gather the data, working on that continuous cycle of improvement to determine and implement procedures within at least 2 areas. And then the biggest piece of celebration, I think, for me is that cycle of improvement. It would be very easy for me to stand up here and tell you this is what every school is going to do, and these are the procedures for the hallway, or these are the procedures for the lunchroom. And that could be done. I could do that. But this work is really driven by the team within the building and the staff within the buildings. Foundation makes sure every staff member has a voice in decision making. So Foundations team are using the data, so they're looking at the referrals, they're looking at interview forms, they're looking at everything that we have, and they're using staff feedback to drive the work, to determine next steps. So speaking of next steps, our Foundations teams meet at least once a month. They will continue to meet once a month as long as I'm here. Our district MTSS team is also looking at district data and school-wide data. We also meet monthly. We will have our second semester foundation walk. They're already scheduled. And then the last piece that I want to talk about is we've had a consultant working with us, Tricia Skiles, who is fabulous. She's been working with us on this journey the last few years. We want to continue to use her. She wrote the book on this stuff, so we want to make sure we're still moving in the right direction. So each summer, I think this summer, it's been Summer Academy the last few years, but it may not work out for Summer Academy this year. We're bringing in all of our Foundations teams to do some professional development with them, and then also give them an opportunity to work with Tricia, because she truly is the expert in this area. So with that, I would answer any questions.
To put you on the spot, what percentage-ish of a reduction have we seen since coming in to Foundations and CHAMPS and all this? We looking like 20, 30, 40%?
The last time I looked, it was not 20 or 30, but it was about 15% the last time I looked. And I pull it each month, but it has to go back and look at the years, so.
We're talking about over 3-4 years ago, or when this started?
Yep.
That's still significant, so.
And there are schools that, I mean, there's so many success stories that come with it. There are schools that are obviously more than that, and there's schools that are less than that. But there are a few schools who have really implemented not only this, but our SEL curriculum and everything else that we are using that have seen really significant results.
Anything further from the board? Questions for Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you.
No?
Great, yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Mr. Hamilton.
And for our final presentation, Mr. Tripp, I will invite Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Stile, who will present tonight on the Raptor technology. I really look forward to this presentation. This is something we've been talking about for a while, It is really about safety and security, and I look forward to our discussion. We know that we have done a lot of work around safety and security, but I think this tool, or a tool like this, will help elevate us to the next level. So, Mr. Hamilton, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate being here again. This is the best part of my job, is really that I get to do a lot of different things, and I really enjoy that. So you may remember we had a meeting in September where we were talking about school safety, and we went over all the things that we're doing. And we have, I think, I don't want to toot our own horns, but I think we've done a really good job of being progressive in what we're doing with our safety and security of schools. But you can never, again, you can never stand still. So when we met with you in September, we told you that we were going to look at some technology pieces to improve our response times and improve communication. And this was really driven by, there had just been a tragic event in Georgia a few weeks before our board meeting, you may remember. And one of the things that came out of that was some panic buttons that teachers were able to have directly with them, that really, all the articles are saying possibly save lives within that shooting. So this is really coming out of that work, and we were given the direction of really looking for a product that would improve our response times, because the shorter the response time, the more likely we have people there to help, right, and do the right thing, and mitigate some of the dangers that are there, and provide two-way communication to staff, administrators, and responders during emergency situations. So with that, Mr. Stahl and I, Dr. Murillo said move forward with this. So John Stahl and I decided we probably should get some input from schools. So we asked 3 of our SOMs, who are really, when we look at SOMs, Chuck Kaiser is from Thomas Jefferson, Kelly McGreevy is from Kern, and Jackie McLeod from Carter Lake. The SOMs are the ones that are writing their emergency operations plans. They're on the incident commands, so they're directly involved with school safety. And so we chose to use SOMs rather than principals, because our principals are pulled in a lot of different directions, and we really felt like the SOMs could provide us good input. And then myself and Mr. Stahl were on the committee. The committee looked at 4 different products. 3 of the products we asked, and they came and did demonstrations here for us with the committee. And then once the one product, Raptor, was, we decided that was the unanimously voted on as what we should go with. We did the reference checks. Raptor Technologies has been around for 20 years. They're ever evolving. And I think what drew us to them the most, before I let John speak, is they have worked with several school districts that were close to us, and when we did the reference checks, they really panned out to do what they say that they would do, and they provided the assistance that we would need to get this up and running. So with that, I'll turn this over to Mr. Stahl to talk more about the technology and the pieces of Raptor.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Thank you, Dr. Murillo and School Board, for allowing us to come and talk to you tonight about the Raptor Technologies. Like Mr. Hamilton said, it became very clear as we took this through the committee that Raptor was proven technology that continues to innovate. In addition, as we started to research Raptor, we found out that lots of large schools in our area and across the state of Iowa use Raptor technologies. Another piece that makes Raptor really powerful is seamless integration with our SIS system, aka PowerSchool. This will allow for our staff to be able to see their classes in a timely manner and to make some documentation as needed. Another piece that really stood out from us is Raptor works with the SRP, Standard Response Protocol, through the I Love You Guys Foundations. If you look over to the right of the door, you'll see that's our SRP, and that's throughout our building and has been for many years. So having that is a key component. So when I jump up to shortened response time, our staff are going to see the same things they've been seeing all along, just through a technology-driven app. In addition, once they select an alert, within 1.5 seconds, it will go out to the rest of the staff, display units, Chromebooks. The types of device it will work on, anything that's web-based, which is really nice because that will integrate really well with our Chromebooks. That will be the primary device we use. It will work with our ClearTouch panels as well, and if a staff member so chose, they could use their cell phone as well. So this slide here kind of demonstrates, once you've selected an alert, and I've just picked a couple here, this is what you might see on a display unit. Those two monitors, those are our clear touch panels, and the one in the middle would be what it might look like on a Chromebook. In addition to some of the display units you see down at Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln, it would also be able to interface with those. This is a key component because everybody can get the alert in a timely manner. On this slide, what you're looking at, to the far left, you see the mobile phone. That's initially what the app looks like. So if you're going in there, it's clear and concise. And again, I refer over to the emergency response protocols. Should have a very similar feel. The next device next to it is it also through geo-mapping shows location. I want to highlight this. We can choose to use this or not, but at away games, football and basketball, we could use the Raptor technology and it would work. On the far right, that is a tablet and or iPad. That's another way that it might look. And then in the middle, you can see on a Chromebook or a PC, that's something what it might look like in a lockdown. We've got a short video, I think around 40 seconds for you, that'll add a little more detail to what we've discussed.
Welcome to Raptor Technologies Emergency Management. Out of the 4 components that comprise emergency management, let's focus on Raptor Alert. Today I'll be demonstrating from 3 different mobile devices, all of which representing 3 different people signed into Raptor High School. Demonstration for mobile devices is strictly used so you can see cause and effect of multiple people communicating during an emergency. Please keep in mind that the desktop version of the app also allows for the same capabilities. Raptor alerting is comprised of 2 different types of alerts. First are critical alerts, as represented by these colorful icons on the screen. I'm demonstrating the I Love You Guys Foundation standard response protocol. Keep in mind, we can customize these icons to fit your needs. Critical alerts are designed for everyone everywhere, as everyone has an action to take, such as a lockdown or an evacuation. Once these are sent, the receivers, which is everybody in the building, whether they are on a desktop computer, a laptop computer, a Chromebook, or a mobile device, will receive them in a variety of ways in about 1.5 seconds. Team Assist, on the other hand, is designed for isolated emergencies or just a request for assistance. As you can see, these are ones I have created for my organization. They can be anything you'd like them to be. They are unlimited, and each one represents a specific receiver, whether it's an individual or a group of people, such as medical assistance. Unlike my critical alerts, where everyone everywhere receives a notification of an emergency, medical assistant only goes out to my medically trained staff within the school that have been pre-designated in the system, as well as administrators if need be. Whether it's a critical alert or an isolated emergency through Team Assist, an alert goes out as follows. In this instance, I'll press my lockdown. The deliberate action of press, slide, seat, release causes the alert to be sent. Notice the 1.5 second delay before people start to receive information immediately. You can hear the text notification, email notification, and push notification to include a wake-up alert that takes a sleeping device, even if it's in Do Not Disturb, wakes it up with an audible sound. Once my staff have received their notifications, they can move inside the body of the emergency and begin communicating in a variety of ways. If you'd like to learn more, Raptor would be happy to answer your questions or set up a personalized demonstration to answer questions that suit your specific needs.
So like the video said, I think it's important to know the actions we already know. We already know what to do when we call a secure, or we already know what to do when we call a lockdown. So the actions don't change for us. What is really changing is, let's say, for example, we need to go into a lockdown because there's something going on within the office. How we currently do that now is we generally use our walkie-talkies and our intercom to make that call, hoping that everybody within the building hears that emergency response and goes into lockdown. With this, like Mr. Stiles said, whether it's a cell phone, which would be optional for staff, or a computer or the displays, we can easily, from a touch of a button, make that announcement and don't have to go to a centralized place to do that. The cool part about the Team Assist is I was working with a student the other day at one of our high schools that had a medical 504. So when they have episodes, they are required to go to the nurse, or they go to the nurse. But they need an escort. So how we would currently do that is we would pick up our phones within our classroom. We would call down to the nurse and say, so-and-so needs an escort to the nurse, hoping that the nurse is in her office and available to come. Through this app, we would be able to hit one button through the Team Assist and be able to ask for that same assistance, and it goes to all of the people within the building who, because we can configure it how we want to, we'll go to all those people that are available to help with that student. Does that make sense? Okay. So a couple things, and I have to apologize. I gave you a ton of information on this because I want to be transparent. But really, like I said before, we were really looking at this as the Raptor Alert was the tool that we wanted. But as we've worked with Raptor, we realized that Raptor Alert was just part of, well, not just part, is part of Raptor, a Raptor suite. So there's two other things that I want to mention just really briefly that we're going to benefit and again enhance our work that we're already doing. They have Raptor Accountability and Reunification. Again, it follows the standard response protocol from I Love You Guys Foundation. This tool is really following what we already know on how to do reunification, except it gives us the access at our phone, at our computer, and it's readily available and ready to go, rather than us having to do the work when we go through those situations. And then the drill manager. I mentioned in September how I have created a calendar of drills that schools are expected to do, and then they provide feedback to us about those drills. The drill manager is, again, one place for this information. We would enter when our drills are supposed to be done. It would automatically email out to our SOMs or principals, who's ever designated within the building, telling them, hey, there's an evacuation drill this week, please make sure that this is done. And then it provides a tool for them to go back in and provide feedback about how they did during that drill or actual event. So those were additional tools to Raptor Alert. So you're probably wondering what this costs. The total cost for all of our buildings to use Raptor Alert, and it doesn't matter the number of staff members, it's by buildings, is $35,200. Now, I will say, moving forward, we're going to look at using Raptor Alert or Raptor for a couple other things. Like we currently have a visitor management system. Next year we will use Raptor, so it will save us money because we won't be using that system that we're already paying for. So it's not just new $35,200. It's going to be not quite that difference in products. And then I wanted to let you know when we looked at the other products, we weren't looking for the cheapest product. We didn't go out there looking for the cheapest product, but I think it's important to know the other products we looked at were ranging from $41,000 to $131,000 for us to use. We felt like Raptor was the superior product, and it was the cheapest one that we looked at, so it was really a win-win. Next steps. So you are our first people as far as staff. Obviously our SOMs that worked with us knew and their principals knew, but you are our first group that we're bringing this to. Next week we have an administrator meeting, and I think all of the administrators have now been told that this is coming, but we have an administrator meeting next week where we'll go over this same information with them. And then I believe Thursday of this week is the superintendent roundtable, which that's one representative from each school. We'll present this information to them to gain feedback. We believe that this is a product to help us be better, but we want to make sure that we get that input from staff and students, administrators and staff, sorry. We will bring this back to you if everything goes well for board approval on January 28th. If approved, our emergency management training will start the next day. We're in constant contact with Raptor, so they're setting that up for us in hopes that everything goes well. They also understand that the board could always make a decision to not do this. But we're really looking, we hired our director of school safety and security. Dr. Murillo asked me earlier about well, why isn't he doing this presentation? I said, you're right, but he's only been on the job for 3 weeks. So Steve Worley will really be leading this. He's already been out to all of the buildings. He works with the police. I jokingly am saying that. So he will be leading this along with, because it is a technology app, along with our technology department. They will really be working on the implementation of this, and they're trained. They will be fully trained. Our goal, we hope it's sooner because it'll be available to us, but our goal is to be fully implemented, all of our buildings using it by the start of next school year. Again, just to reiterate what we're looking at, the reason why we're doing this is enhancing the good work that we're already doing. We want to increase safety. We want those faster response times. We want improved coordination. We want to minimize the risk during emergencies. We want to improve the situational awareness. With the ability of that two-way communication within the app, we're no longer reliant upon cell phones or those things to hopefully have a cell signal during an emergency. This is web-based in our system that we'll be able to communicate with our staff to let them know exactly what's going on, which will reduce the anxiety. When emergency situations happen, and we're doing another tabletop here in March, at actually a live drill at one of our buildings in March, it is high stress. People don't know what's going on. If we can keep people up to date and keep communicating with them, and they have a way to communicate back to us, it's really going to reduce the anxiety. And then the last part is the enhanced trust. Our staff and students deserve to be able to come to a building, to come to work, and be as safe as possible every single day. This is really demonstrating that the school's district commitment to that safety and student and staff well-being. With that, I would take any questions.
So we had looked at the buttons,
Yes,
and that wouldn't give any information out across computers, correct?
correct. From what we saw from,
Right.
there's like a
Panic button, right.
There's a panic. From what we saw, from what I believe from those panic buttons, they hit it and they're going to get a response, but we don't know necessarily what that response is going to be.
Let me piggyback on that. When Tim's talking about they hit it, like what you saw on many of the news, the response, they then have to go to this web base. They don't rely and don't get any information back. That's just an alerting system.
Yeah, right.
So then they go to get more information. They have to go move over to the web base.
So starting at the web base from the beginning
Yep.
makes more sense.
Saves a step.
So we know if somebody is seeing something outside and they believe that it should be secure, we know, because we've practiced, we continue to practice and do the drills, we know that if we go into secure, that there is a threat outside of our building. If we go into lockdown, we know that there's a threat within the building. If we go into hold, generally we know it's because there's a medical emergency or we just need to make sure hallways are clear. So just that little bit of information, by them being able to choose which one we're calling, will really make a difference in the response and really make a difference in truly the anxiety level of what's going on within a building.
And then only staff would have the ability to do any of these alerts.
Correct. And it's even customizable within that, as not all staff would necessarily need a medical assist. If you're working with the student, I mean, depending upon the school, I'll just say it's customizable, so we can determine who has access to hit what buttons.
Oh, okay.
A couple quick questions. So they demonstrated, using the mobile app, which that makes sense. Now, for the smart screens that are in each classroom, is that also an app, or is it like a web page that they're?
Yes,
that they're
because our smart screens are Android-based, it's an app.
It's an app. Okay. And that was the one thing, the video demonstration that wasn't super clear on, because they mentioned that if there's an alert, you get a text, you get an email, and all that stuff. On the smart screens, is that a notification that's going to show up on the screen, or?
Yeah, so there's two pieces of that. If you want to use the Clear Touch to initiate the notification, you would have to go into the app.
Yeah.
However, there'll be a service running in the background that ties into Raptor Technologies, that if there's something, and it'll actually pull it out of a sleep mode if that happens, and it'll pop up just similar to what we demonstrated.
Okay, cool. That's because they mentioned that with the mobile part, and I wasn't sure if that was going to fit with the screen, because I imagine most of the people are going to be getting the alerts from the touch screen, because hopefully we don't want our teachers to have their phones out all the time.
So they'll get the alert on their Chromebook, they'll get the alert on the Clear Touch, and also in some of the common spaces, they're non-Clear Touch devices, we can interface with those as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Does this integrate, or will this integrate with the buildings that have SROs in them? Will they also have ability to access or whatnot?
Any and all who we give access to can.
Okay.
Would the notifications also populate to students, say like a fire drill or a drill, would that come out to the students' Chromebooks?
Yes, if the district chose that route.
Does,
And I'm sorry, it's custom, all the notifications, so what you're saying is medical alert could go to these 10 people, where a different emergency could go to 10 different people, and that's all customizable based on the way you guys have your protocol set up.
Correct. One of the pieces that we're excited about, and excited is probably not the right word, but one of the pieces that really helps us as a district, myself, Mr. Stile, Dr. Murillo, and Mr. Worley will be programmed for all schools. So if they go into a lockdown, we know that that's a dangerous situation within the building. We are notified instantaneously, within that 1.5 seconds. We're not reliant upon a principal to then, or another administrator, to call or text us to let us know what's going on. We know that there's something going on within a building. If it's not during a scheduled drill time, we know that there's something going on, and we can immediately start to get assistance ready for a building.
Great with fire department, police department?
Yes, it can integrate directly with them. We would want to spend a little bit of time figuring out, do we want staff to have that ability to automatically go? Because just like a panic button that we have within our buildings already, that go directly to police and fire, or emergency, essentially 911, it has the ability to do that. We just need to think that through to see what that looks like within the building.
The only concern I would have with not having the button as a sole option is what if it's the teacher that's in, or what if they're in the hallway, they don't have their phone, they don't have a laptop, they don't have access to anything, then what? Just back to standard protocol with the student finding help, or there's no way to find help?
Just like we are now, we're reliant upon using either our walkie-talkies or our phones within our buildings, or the intercom system within the building.
That'll all
as well.
stay in place this way.
Correct. That will, all of those things will stay in place. Yep.
So I was real interested in the panic button. I felt like that was like, so full disclosure, I was hunting something like that, right? But as I kept digging into this with Tim and John, what I do like is, because it takes because we're making this emergency from a selection, or because we are hitting an app button, that tells me what I'm coming into, instead of just a panic button going off and we're just running to the fire. Now we know what we're heading toward. And I think that's a smarter, I always say kind of fools rush in. We are not coming in looking like fools, we're coming in prepared. And I like that piece of it. And so I'm hoping that when we really start to roll this out and our staff starts to feel comfortable, more and more will feel comfortable with allowing that app on their phone. But again, it's not something we're requiring, it will be optional, but we will require it on every Chrome and every touchscreen.
You said this will work even outside of school, for a away game somewhere, they can still technically use that app and alert.
With full disclosure, yes, if we set it up for the district.
Yeah, so I imagine then if they're using the apps, they have to have an account, so that way that specific app links to our system as opposed to a different school, correct?
And it actually integrates through the SIS for each
Oh, okay.
Is it customized? So I think of, say we have a diabetic kid at AL. Sorry, the nurse in me comes out. So can you then, are you able to track where that individual is and say, okay, it's sixth period, this teacher, we know this diabetic student is in this room. So then that added level, are you able to get that in detail? I'm just curious.
I think it's a little better than that, because it has geo-mapping, it's able to show it. Because in an emergency situation, you may not be able to communicate what you need, but I can at least communicate that I have a medical
Right.
need. So if you weren't able to say where you were, or if we didn't know where you were, we would be able to use the geo-map function to
Okay.
figure out where you are.
What kind of safeguards does Raptor Technology take to keep our data secure and from outside organizations tampering with stuff?
Great question. Very, very similar. Because we're going to authenticate through our two-factor system, it's the same safeguards we have for our SIS, for our Tyler, for our finance systems and others.
Yeah, well, so how do we currently have an accounting for our students, our staff, and any visitors in our buildings during an emergency when we are needing to find out, have we gotten everybody out of the building, or is everybody accounted for either by their teacher or in some other means of being able to say, hey, I'm safe and secure in this location? How do we currently keep track of all of these people that are in and out of our buildings? And then, is that something that Raptor is available to be able to kind of have a reckoning to a manifest, saying, okay, we've got, Timmy's not in school today, so we don't need to worry about Tim at Roosevelt. So I mean, that's,
I'll grab that one, at least the first part. If I get too far off, Tim just kind of knocked me out of the way. But so currently, we use the TPAS system for all of our visitors, and they check in with the TPAS, and that's kind of what does our background check. And so that list is producible from other locations if need be. This particular system, it will integrate either with the TPAS system, or we can, if we move towards the Raptor visitor management next summer, same thing. It's a seamless integration. As far as attendance goes, since it's interfaced with our SIS, when the teacher brings up their class list or the principal brings up the building, it will show the students that are either out of the office. But it also, if you're a visitor, a teacher can account for them if they happen to be in their classroom.
okay.
To answer your question, currently, we have systems in place for that, but they're really more paper pencil, and they're really more reliant upon, to be completely transparent, we have cell phone chat groups that principals have and those types of things. They're able to use their computers. So we do have systems in place, but they're not near as technology advanced as these, and they'll be at your fingertips and all.
Okay, because it's always concerning leaving somebody behind. You know, it's like, okay, we don't want to. We want to make sure that everybody is removed from that danger situation and have an accounting for everybody.
And that's the other piece, that because it will feed into PowerSchool, it will be able to pull up your class rosters. You'll be able to know who's there and who's not. And you won't be having, back in the old days, we hunted for, our.
You counted heads.
Right?
Yeah.
Counted how many we had, we carried that folder with us as we headed out.
Yeah.
This will be all electronic and we'll know.
Yeah, and even the ones, it'll be marked, they'll say absent on there, and we saw this. When they came, they did over an hour demonstration with us, so it'll say absent on there, but, during an emergency situation, you might have a student who is present at school, but maybe they went to the restroom or something. You have the ability to notate who's with you and who's not, so you are 100% correct. We should be able to account for every single one of our students through this app.
Good.
So related to that, when we were first campaigning for school board, that was probably one of the questions I got asked the most was notification when there's an emergency. Parents see there's an ambulance at school and they panic immediately. Not that we would want to add parents into this alerting system, but is that functionality available to be able to convert this from a alert that's in Raptor to an email that goes to parents that are within the class where an emergency happened? Is that?
So with our current system, it would go through, I would think we'd want that to go through our communications director like we would.
Yeah.
However, we would be able to get it to the communications director in a much faster and timely manner. Because like Mr. Hamilton was saying, a lot of times an ambulance might be on site at the school, and the phone call, maybe the ambulance has been there for 3 or 5 minutes, and the phone call is just making it to central office.
Yeah, and that's the part where I wouldn't want this to be tightly integrated with,
So the challenge would be, the flip side of that is if there was something going on and let's just say it was a drill and it was misread and we had mass chaos running to that building.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I would not want. So yeah, that's good to know, though, that it could be faster communication to the
It will
communications director.
100% mean that the parents will get faster communication, but it would come through the communication department.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
I do have a question. So you mentioned that there are other districts around our area, but across the state that are using Raptor and their features as well. I'm curious if you have heard from those districts their experience and maybe if they've been using it for quite some time, how it's been.
So the schools that we talked to, which it was all very positive experience, and that kind of led the committee to say that this was the one that we really wanted to go to. Because, yeah, they very effective tool. So a couple of the schools that we talked with was Omaha Public, Millard, and also Iowa City in Iowa.
Give an example of how they recommended it, what they thought was a good,
Oh.
why they thought this was a good.
The reason that they really like this is because it followed the SRP protocol and how timely it actually is and how it integrates in a very quick and specific to the display units. Because the display units are actually a key component of this for the individuals in the building.
Was there anything that was on your wish list for this, for the committee's wish list that Raptor doesn't cover, or did they kind of check all the boxes?
That is a good question. Should have been on the committee. And what I would say, from when I brought to everything that I had on my list from the technology side, they met that. And I think that was the piece that really stood out, is they not only met that, but they exceeded it with some of the other value adds, like a visitor management system and the reunification.
Is there, just from a student standpoint, there will be like a differentiation between a drill and an actual emergency on the screen, so they'll know that, okay, yeah.
And I use it as an example, let's just, might be a little hard to see, but if you flip up here, emergency, this is a test.
The big red box, yeah.
Sorry.
I missed it, sorry.
No.
Yeah, the 5 that would be on our screens are exactly following our standard response protocol that we use currently.
Job. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the board? You guys satisfied, excited? Yeah? All right, thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your work.
All right, that takes us to the end of our meeting. I will go ahead and close. We're adjourned.
Thank you, sir.
Question for you.
Where'd our guy go that was coming?
Exactly. Changed his mind, apparently. I didn't mean to put Dr. Matthews on the spot, but is there a way to reverse engineer our EL program?